Let's do initial vote. Initial vote, initial vote. Initial vote, so majority for red with some yellow and orange. Take about 30 seconds. There's enough dissent. Okay, let's do second vote, second vote. Second vote. Red has gained a few converts, but it's not unanimous. So before we discuss the answers, let's look back at what's going on in the code here. Okay, so remember I said my claim is that this test could be easily made to pass. We're going to do that in just a moment. But what we're actually doing in this test is by setting up this expectation, what we're saying is all we really care about is that as a result, by the end of this test case, by the time we reach the word end in the execution here, as a result of whatever we did in this test case, at some point, somebody should have tried to call the find in TMDB class method of movie and should have tried to pass to it the argument hardware. Now, if you've been sort of putting the pieces together about the discussion we had about method missing and metaprogramming and so forth, you might realize that there's a very natural way to implement this in Ruby, right? We basically can say, oh, if you're expecting that some method or other is going to get called, I know what we can do. We could just open up the class that is supposed to define that method, redefine that method ourselves so that we can watch whether anybody ever calls it, let your test case run, and then when your test case is over, we can actually list, did anybody actually try to call it or not? So with that background in mind, it provides a stand-in for a real method that doesn't exist. Clearly, it's doing that, so the first choice is true. It would override the real method even if it did exist. This is also true, and it's extremely important. And we're going to come back to another self-check question that hammers home why that is. It can be issued either before or after the code that should make the call. Well, that's the one where you fall down. If we want to be able to spy on a method, we have to indicate our desire to do that before someone actually tries to call it, right? If we didn't do that, there'd be no way to sort of after the fact ask who called what method. But if we redefine the method so that we can spy on it, then we actually have the ability to check whether the method got called correctly. And it absolutely exploits open classes because the way that we're doing this is we're essentially surgically redefining that method in place. And there's a really good elaboration in the book. I think it's a good elaboration. That's probably because I wrote it. But it's about how you would do this in languages that are statically compiled or languages where you have to relink whenever you want to override the definition of a particular method in a particular class. The bottom line, that the TLDR version is dynamic languages with open classes are your friend for this. So does everybody understand why the only false statement is the third statement, the red statement? OK, this gets better.